This is National Poetry Month, and you know, April is always big, right? Some of you may be getting a poem a day in your email from the Academy of American Poets or publishers. People are sharing new poetry. People are sharing, you know, favorite poems. So what I thought might be nice would be to share some ideas for writing. Particularly because we have so much time for reflection right now. And sometimes we're looking for things to do. Even if people are not accustomed to writing, or maybe you think this is, you know, a little scary to try it, I would say go ahead. You know, this is just an exploration. For many years I've been teaching, and sometimes students are reluctant, but once they get into it, they discover how much fun this can be. And so I've been thinking a lot about what we're all doing with our time, right? So we are inside a lot, and then we go outside, we go for walks. And while these things become perhaps mundane for us, there's really a lot we can do with these experiences. So I have 3 ideas for you. One has to do with those walks that we take outside. One has to do with cooking and eating. And one has to do with our surroundings inside the house. So let's think first about walking. For example, a few hours ago, I went out for a walk, as I do every day. And I often go along the same path because I'm taking a break, right? But I don't have time to drive out for hours. And I was noticing, you know, what's different today, and you know, the weather. For example, a few snowflakes were falling. The clouds are pretty low. They're kind of a light gray, not much sun coming through. The wind is cool, coming from the west. And sometimes on this walk, I see deer. Sometimes they're in my neighbor's yard. Sometimes they're walking along the cliff face on the north side of Billings, where they have great camouflage and they can hide out. You know, so each day there's something that I attend to or pay attention to that it may be a little different from another day. I actually went out then on the prairie, and there are these little purple flowers starting to bloom. I don't even know what they are. But that's only the external world, right? That's what I'm encountering. And then because this walk takes about an hour, maybe a little longer, there's everything that's spinning inside my head. So maybe there's a song, right? Maybe there's a memory of something. Maybe I see something that reminds me of something else. And so the kind of internal and external play with each other. And I have this whole series of details from my walk, which then can be turned into some kind of writing, maybe a poem, maybe some prose. And I wanted to share a few stanzas from a poem by Melissa Kwasny. This is from her book, Reading Novalis in Montana. And it's a place-based poem. It has to do with the particular location and these kinds of details that I'm talking about. And so I wanted to offer this as an example. This is called Mountains. Everyone is gone now but me and the mule deer, who are soft gray and separating into gender. At 3, cold begins to enter the rooms. Finch nest, flicker, damask on the leaves of willow. They are right above my head, above the narrow swath of my present. I catch their movement. How is it they make no sound? I live in the mountain's feet, a scrap, an offering. And so I guess that's the first idea. You know, on these daily walks, simply, you might even take a notebook with you. and just kind of tracking some of the details and then figuring out how you want to shuffle them into something.
Do we need to have like a form, or how do we start putting it into a poem?
I just start, I think of it as sort of pulling at a thread. Like if there's that old myth of the thread leading into the maze, just finding the end of that thread. So you might mention the first thing that catches your notice. Maybe it's the sage, maybe it's stones on the path, maybe it's the sound of a bird up in the trees that you can, figure out later whether it's a chickadee or a robin or a flicker or something else. And then follow your words and see where they lead. I mean, there are ways of writing where you can have a received form and play with that, and really all you have to do is Google poetry forms and you'll get whole lists of them with instructions. You certainly can do that. But I guess these I'm thinking of just in terms of taking what you're encountering and working with those details as a way into something. We are natural storytellers. We quite naturally take some little detail and start building upon it. I think it's just a basic human skill. It's how we navigate the world. And so writing it down is just the next step.
Great, thank you. It'll give new purpose to my walks around the neighborhood.
Yeah, well, I think it enriches us actually. On the one hand, we're confined, we're cooped up, maybe we're frustrated, we can't do what we normally want to do. On the other hand, this may be the rare opportunity for us to really have that inward looking time that maybe we need. And we'll all emerge from this eventually.
Well, I do know that I have been cooking a lot more every day, and that when you mentioned that at the beginning, that one caught my attention. Can you tell us about that one?
Yeah, I am also cooking more, and it's kind of nice, It's a very sensory activity, right? Where we can admire the beauty of the food, we can chop it, we hear it, we taste it, we smell it. It really is so engaging. And I found actually on Poetry Foundation, there's an entire collection associated with food and cooking. So that is a great link if people want to find that. But I found this piece by Li Young Lee, and it's called From Blossoms. So I'll just go ahead and share that. Okay. And I'm going to read, again, I'm only reading a few stanzas. It's a longer poem. From Blossoms. From blossoms comes this brown paper bag of peaches we bought from the boy at the bend in the road where we turned towards signs painted peaches. From laden boughs, from hands, from sweet fellowship in the bins comes nectar at the roadside, succulent peaches we devour, dusty skin and all, comes the familiar dust of summer, dust we eat. Oh, to take what we love inside, to carry within us an orchard, to eat not only the skin, but the shade, not only the sugar, but the days, to hold the fruit in our hands, adore it, then bite into the round jubilance of a peach. Isn't that gorgeous?
That's wonderful. I can taste it.
Yeah. And so I think working with food, sharing food with our loved ones gives us those kinds of opportunities to just look deeply at what it is we are cooking, eating, sharing, maybe think about where it came from. Think about whether we have grown it. Think about whether we're getting to plant our gardens very soon. Think about our experience of this food over time, because often, you know, we associate foods too with previous memories. Food and memory just go together. And again, to take those details and put them in a poem and sort of follow where they lead, I think can be really rich.
Awesome. I'm looking forward to my meal tonight.
Yeah, yeah, and the colors too, right? It's so visual as well. I mean, really, you think about the five senses, and food really takes us there into all of them.
You had one more prompt. What was
I did. I have one more idea. And that has to do with the things that surround us. I don't know about you, but you know, in my ordinary life, I spend a lot of time getting out of the house and to the office where I spend my days, maybe running errands, coming home. But now that I'm at home and sort of centered here, I am noticing more. And I'm kind of fascinated by this always. You know, things that we inherit, things that have been gifted to us, things we have picked up along the way, how sometimes very ordinary things have a sort of embodiment of story in them. And this seems like a perfect opportunity to work with that. One of the exercises I often do in my classroom is to bring in a kind of a basket of things, of feathers and rocks and pine cones and maybe photographs and cups and pictures and all kinds of things, to dole them out. And we start with description. How could you describe this so that someone who is not looking at it could actually see what it's like? But then moving on also to association. What does it remind you of? And that can be wild associations, right? That a shell reminds you of a playground slide, which reminds you of a story of childhood. You know, so you're really trying to tap into these sort of loops of memory and association, because the item is just the reminder. That's, you know, the kind of trigger for that to happen. And of course, I mean, if you know, look at all this stuff behind me, right? There's a lot of possibility for most of us, right? And so that's my third idea. And, you know, it could go in depth with a single item, or you could go on a wild listing escapade, you know, thinking about how the names of things sound when you pile them together and arrange them in curious ways, so that they begin to sound like a rap song or something.
That's great. I like that. When you first described this idea, I thought of Marie Kondo and clearing out all of the stuff, and how you're supposed to hold each item and let it speak to your emotions, right? I haven't actually read Marie Kondo.
It's whether it gives you joy. Yeah. Right.
So this is like holding it close, and whether it gives you joy or whatever emotion it gives you, you're listening to its story, like objects have lives of their own, and then you're gonna write it down, and maybe you keep it and maybe you don't.
And sometimes it's fun to even pose that question: if it could speak to you, what would it say? So the nature of all of these prompts, just to kind of recap a little bit, is to work both with external detail and internal depth. You know, I always feel like for all of us, the interior is like this deep well of ideas. You never run dry. There is always more to discover. And the external details simply become kind of the vehicle that leads you into that, because your mind will always create these associations and connections. So I'm really looking forward to see, you know, whatever people say about their experience of writing. It can be frustrating. It can be, you know, you can be happy about it. And what poems or prose you come up with, because you don't have to really write poetry if you don't want to write poetry. They all work for prose as well.
We are, so this is our introduction video so that people have some prompts. Please take these prompts and throughout the week, write your own. Join us on Facebook to ask questions or share ideas all through the week. And then Friday at 4 p.m. on April 24th, we will have a live virtual event, and everyone who has written poetry during the week or wants to share those poems or just share their experience of trying to write. You don't have to actually share what you've written if you don't want to. But we can all join together for a happy hour and share some poetry from sheltering in place. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, and we will see you on Friday.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.